Hello, and welcome to Down the Rabbit Hole. This is episode 88, and today we are going to be talking about a dollar princess by the name of Mary Goelet, who was married to Henry Innes-Ker, who was the 8th Duke of Roxburghe in 1903. Kylie! Before I jump into today's episode, please hit that like button, ring that bell for notifications. Also, please subscribe. Help a girl out. Here on Down the Rabbit Hole, we talk about history, we talk about urban legends, paranormal activity, anything worth going down the rabbit hole to discuss. And I love the Dollar Princess's history so much that a lot of people don't really understand what is the Dollar Princess and everything. And I thought I'd talk about the Pacific Dollar Princess that actually helped with the English economy as it was. So, who is this Mary Goelet? And why is she a dollar princess? Well, her parents were Mary Wilson Goelet and Ogden Goelet, who was a prominent heir and landlord in New York City and the great grandson of Peter Goelet, who was heir to one of the largest fortunes of the time. Her only siblings was her younger brother Robert, who built Glenmore Mansion, and through her mom, she was the niece of Richard Thomas Thornton Wilson Jr. and Grace Graham Wilson Vanderbilt and Cornelius Vanderbilt III. I think I'm starting to see a connection with all these dollar princesses we're talking about because they all have connections to some prominent families in the U.S. Such as the Vanderbilts, which I will talk about a little bit later on down the road in this podcast. But anyway, through her father, she was the niece of Robert Goelet, who was the first cousin of Walton Goelet, um, and everything. And she was a granddaughter of Robert Goelet Sr., the co-founder of the Chemical Bank of New York. So with that being said, there wasn't much I could really find on her, but I will try to fluff this episode up as much as I can to at least get to the 5 minute mark, so it's not a complete waste of your time. But in 1897, she was rumored to be engaged to William Montague, um, who was a 20-year-old ninth Duke of Manchester. He later married a different American by the name of Helena Zimmerman, who was the daughter of Ireland industrialist Eugene Zimmerman of Cincinnati, Ohio. Now, in late 1898, she was once rumored to be engaged to Viscount Crichton and the eldest son and the heir to the fourth Earl Arran. On November 10th, 1903, she would be married to Henry Innes-Ker, the 8th Duke of Roxburghe, and he was the son of James Henry Robert Innes-Ker, who was the 7th Duke of Roxburghe, and Lady Anne Emily Spencer Churchill. Again, why does that name sound so familiar? Um, who and he and she was the fourth daughter of John Spencer Churchill, who was the 7th Duke of Marlborough. If you remember, I can't remember if it's on this podcast or my Dark Academia podcast, but I talked about Georgina Cavendish and her very, how do I look say her marriage? Interesting marriage, I guess modern for the times, and very weird considering that she was basically a throuple, for Georgina Cavendish. But anyway, Emily, but John, who's also served in governments as Lord President and Councils of and Lord Lieutenant of Ireland, his wife Lady Frances Vane, who was the daughter of the third Marquess of Londonderry, and he was first cousins. Well, can we guess who? Winston Churchill. And do we want to know who Winston Churchill's mom was? Jenny Jerome. We talked about her on this podcast for sure, I know, and everything. Now, Lord Robert Hines Kerr married the actress Jose Collins in 1920, and after 10 years of being childless, Mary would give birth to a son and heir. The Duchess of Roxburghe would die April 26, 1937, in London. So, what was life like in Scotland? Well, Kylie, Kai, um, the eighth The eighth Duke and Duchess of Roxburghe settled in the Flores Castle, where Mary decorated the fortress with her own collection of art, including priceless series of 17th century goblins manufactured tapestries. And at that time of the marriage to the Duke, she was one of the wealthiest Americans heiress with a dowry of $20 million, and that was only exceeded by Consuelo Vanderbilt, which we will talk about her in a few episodes down later, so you can go wait if you're waiting for that one, because we know you can't talk about Dollar Princesses without talking about Consuelo Vanderbilt, and it was still her wealth in the wealth that brought the transatlantic marriage of the pre 1914 era, and everything. Whenever I should do a video on the Gilded Age episode on the Gilded Age. Now, in 1913, she was a guest of Queen Mary and King George at Windsor Castle, and she and the Duke were also guests of King Edward VII and Queen Alexandra. In 1929, she would inherit 300,000 from her mom's estate after the death of her mom, as well as the Goelet art collection. That is basically it for this episode. Join me next time as we talk about um, Alberta Sturgis. But I will see you next time. Y'all have a great day.